man, comfort can work for and against you. It
Okay.
can, and for you, it, it gives you the security. It gives you, takes the guesswork out. It makes life simple. And if that's what it is for you, then so be it, right? It's your choice. If it works, it can work against you is because guess what? There's so much gas in your tank. You have so much distance to go, but you only choose to, drive in the neighborhood. So you don't get to where you ultimately could be because you don't want to take a chance and go beyond what you already know. So it just becomes really important on knowing your journey and your purpose and what it is that you want from your life. And once you identify your life, then things start to reveal themselves totally different to you and you know what's next.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Okay, so before we get into today's episode, I really have to start this conversation off by saying I want to take the time to thank you all for allowing Black to Business to be a part of your entrepreneurial journey. Honestly, this is something that we do not take lightly. And my team and I, each week, we probably check our download numbers like we check social media. But within the last few weeks, honestly, the numbers have skyrocketed. And we're like, what the freak? But we see people who are showing up consistently, allowing us to be a part of the journey. And I want to mention that today specifically because I've expressed before that in my 2021 recap episode, how we were intentional about the podcast and just the direction that we wanted to go in, showing up for you all every week. Initially, it was a stretch for us, but it was something that we know we needed to do. And I talk about a lot stepping outside of your comfort zone. And that is honestly what today is all about. It's about stepping outside of your comfort zone. And for us, it was us betting on ourselves and knowing that these podcasts, these conversations are valuable for you. And I kind of feel like today's guest is so special because I think that us showing up consistently, us betting on this podcast is what allowed us to have the opportunity to interview today's guest, who is extra special. So I just wanted to say thank you all for allowing us to be a part of the journey. We don't take it lightly. And even if you are not writing a review, we've gotten a lot of reviews over the last couple of weeks as well. But also if you're sharing it with someone who might find value in these episodes, we truly appreciate it and we can see it showing up. And so that brings me to the introduction of today's guest, Benny Pough. And the special thing about Benny is he is legendary. He has been working with some amazing people. Just to give you a little background about who he is a music mogul, CEO, real estate investor, and author with over 30 years of experience. He shaped some of the careers of some of today's top artists of our culture, like Jay-Z, Rihanna, Kanye West, Mary J. Blige, Travis Scott, Future, DJ Khaled, and 21 Savage, just to name a few. And because of these significant contributions to the music industry, he's been able to work at some of the powerhouse labels like Motown Records and Def Jam, to Epic Records and Rock Nation Music. And he has also decided to share his story in his new book called Impact: Life, Leadership, and Betting on Yourself, which is today's topic. So we're going to dive into this conversation with Benny, and he's going to talk about, his amazing career, but also at the highlight of his career and just having this amazing journey, how he still decided that that's not it for me. This is not it for me. I want to do more, and deciding to transition into doing his own thing at DVERSE Media. So I think he's the perfect person to speak about betting on yourself. Again, I was excited about this conversation, and I really think it came from, being recognized as we are in the top space as a business podcast and being here and showing up consistently. So this isn't scripted, but I'm so excited. I wanted to share with you all. So let's dive in. So Benny, welcome to the Black to Business podcast. I am so excited to have you on the show. Truly, I thank you for agreeing to be on the show. So welcome.
Hello, Miss Monique. What do you mean agreed to be on the show? Where else would I be but with you today?
We love the energy. The energy is amazing. See, I know it's going to be a great show. Well, thank you. And I know that you are so legendary, but I always want to start my guests off with just if you could just briefly tell my listeners who you are, what is it that you do in your business, and how did you get where you are today? Y'all, he is legendary. Just go ahead.
Wow, you hit me real hard. 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to give you the first answer to the first question. I'm first a child of God. I'm a son. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a friend, and importantly, I'm a person living his purpose. I've started my career in the music business because I'm a tenured music executive back in the early 90s, and had the luxury and fortunate opportunity to work with some of the biggest artists in the world, starting my career with Boyz II Men, and walking through, the halls with a host of all kinds of different artists, from DJ Khaled, Rihanna, Mariah, J-Lo, Future, 21 Savage, Yo Gotti, The Dream, Neo, Jeezy, Rick Ross, just to name a few.
Wow. I'm just like mouth open. We are bringing it on the Black to Business podcast. This is so amazing. And actually, you mentioning that, so you are in the music industry, but you didn't start with music. You kind of fell into the music industry from comedy, correct?
Correct, and it says a lot. I didn't wake up in my life with the passion of being a musician or a singer or a performer. But I did find my way into the music business from the arts, doing comedy. While I was in college, I was performing around the New York City area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, doing stand-up. And it was crazy during those times. And I'm not sure what the equivalent is now, but we were making $25 to no money per show. And fortunate enough, I'd created a name for myself in the market. And the regional director of promotions for Motown Records, she booked me for a show in this place called The Cellar on 96 in Amsterdam in New York City. And at the end of the show, she asked me what was my next steps in my plan. I just graduated from college, literally 5 days before the show. Hadn't prepared a resume, hadn't thought about it. And she said, why don't you come down and be my intern? And that was the beginning of something great for me. Got into the business, realized that I fell in love with the business of music. And then that just opened up to me being introduced to how the creative process, the business process, and all those things come together to make a superstar artist and, a multi-billion-dollar company.
Amazing. So I mean, I think that is so powerful in that, like a lot of people probably are listening, feel like they have to have it all figured out, graduating college, and you're showing like, okay, this is something that I fell into, and just the years of experience that you've been able to do these things. And I want to dive deeper into your journey because, like I said, it's amazing. And you mentioned some of the artists that you've worked with, like some of our favorites, Jay-Z, Rihanna, Future, and I love Future, and Jeezy. Just to name a few, can you share some of the experiences working with these artists and how you were able to witness them develop and, some of the key things that made them great?
First, I want to deal with, let me find out you a little ratchet rap lover out here, before we move on.
Listen, I'm from
find out.
I'm from Georgia. We like that trap music.
Yeah, you trapping out here. I hear you. But more importantly, the thing that makes executives, music people great is the fact that most people who are and get to the point of success beyond their wildest dreams are people who actually saw it in their dreams and realized it not only in saying it, but doing it. The people that you mentioned and all of the great artists that I've worked with and the great executives that I worked with, they've all said it and they've lived it. even when times were good or times were bad, they never threw in the towel and they saw it. It's like, think about the checkered flag in the finish line in the race. And ideally, they've always kept their eyes on the prize. And that's what we all try to do. But most importantly, when you see the people who've made it, they're the ones who just never take their eye off. They're diligent, dedicated, and they pursue it to any means necessary.
I love it. And that just speaks to, I think it's so important for today's conversation about, betting on yourself, and due to your significant contributions in the music industry. So you've worked with some powerhouse labels like Motown Records and Def Jam to Epic Records and Rock Nation Music. You've been able to build from behind the scenes, but also establish your own personal brand. Was that intentional, or did it just naturally happen for you?
It's really interesting that you say that. I have a book coming out. Mm-hmm. It's actually available on Amazon, pre-order. But I learned that day one. And I would say how my first step on realizing what it takes to build a brand was because my last name is Pough. And the way that it's spelled, it's not natural for people to say Pough. So I always introduce myself as Benny Pough, no matter what. Benny Pough, always Benny Pough, because one, I don't like my name being butchered. And two, I want to take the pressure off the person on the other end of embarrassment. So as a kid, I was always a firm handshake and Benny Pough. And realizing that started creating strength in me, confidence in me, and realizing what my presence will mean by my introduction. And doing so, that evolved into me having a true deep understanding of what it takes for people to understand who and what you are and what you represent by how you represent yourself.
That is so powerful. And, because I run into a lot of entrepreneurs, sometimes myself included, I've dealt with this, who battle with wanting to rule from behind the scenes. Do you agree with that to a certain extent, or do you think that it's truly important for people to, separate their personal brand or build a personal brand in general, separate from their business if it's a different name?
You should never lose you. You should never give you up, because you're taking you to the next stop. And then when you get on the train again, you're taking you to the next stop. So if I was only all encompassing Motown Records, you would know who I am. If I was only about the brand. Now, obviously, I have to represent the brand, but I am the product for the brand is how I always viewed it. Like, I am what represents the brand, is why I've been hired to do whatever it is to facilitate for the company I'm working for. But I'm not leaving me. I am my IP.
Exactly.
Ultimately, right? So it's there are people who get consumed all into the company, and that's what the culture should be. Understanding if that's where you see yourself finalizing and you are now part of something bigger than yourself, then that's okay. But if you see your journey is something that's going to morph into something bigger than where you're at, then you should always represent yourself in both circumstances. So Benny Pough, regardless of the company, is synonymous with the company or by itself.
Powerful message. And you know what that makes me think of? It's like when you mentioned earlier, starting as an intern and then getting to such a high level. What do you, just looking back, what do you think allowed you to elevate about yourself? What was it?
Discipline. It wasn't easy. Understanding where we come from, there wasn't a lot of talk about next steps. So when the promoter at the end of the comedy show asked me what my next step was, she said, "Why don't you come and be my intern?" Guess what? Nobody ever told us what an intern was. But I was a sales guy by trade. I'd had multiple sales jobs. I worked for Citibank. I sold cutlery door to door. I sold copier machines. So for me, it's like, yeah, I can do that. I'll be an intern, whatever that is.
Right.
Right. I'm going to be that. And, you get in, you fit in, and you figure it out. So that was what was really important for me was realizing how to figure it out and keep moving forward.
And how did you know that? Because I just think it's important to get a part of the journey and people who are listening. How did you know that you were going in the right direction?
Well, I didn't know. I can't say because something that I fell into was the right direction. Prior to that, back to the discipline aspect, I might have had 20 jobs before that internship, like literally. Like I've had over 60 jobs in my lifetime. So that was a third of you understand? Like it was a third of my life that there were times I was working jobs, quitting a job on a Friday, starting a new one on a Monday with that check coming from the old job to the new job. You understand?
Yeah.
So in essence, for me, my discipline was that I knew I would be in a capacity of selling because that was my core competency, communication and selling. So once I got into music and realizing that this is it's a non-traditional product, selling artists and music to radio stations. Wow. I'm already prepared for that. I understand that. It's just diving into, the nuances and the idiosyncrasies of this particular field, but I'm prepared for that. Now, once I fell in love with it, that was a whole nother gear to go to. So in essence, that was the payoff for me is that I was already prepared for the opportunity to be in this position. And now in the position, I'm ready to perform.
Love it. All right. So I think now let's talk about the transition because you have transitioned into becoming CEO of your own company, DVERSE Media. Let's dive into what that transition was like and then what your company does.
It was incredible for me and well needed. I've spent 3 decades in the record companies, and it was an amazing opportunity to learn and to grow and see how companies work and how artists are developed. That for me in 2018, it was an opportunity for me to say, you know what, all that I've learned, let me apply to myself. And ideally, if I'm able to identify talent, identify executives, I'll be able to monetize and have a company with my fingerprints, my direction, as well as the team that will make the next best superstar, which we signed. Her name is Paris Gatlin. So DVERSE is a full-fledged distribution company, meaning that we can put music out to all of the DSPs, as well as I've signed an artist, Paris Gatlin, directly to the company. So we function both as a distributor and a proper record label, looking for talent, curating talent, and giving artists an opportunity to maximize their monetization is what's exciting and what I look forward to.
And Benny, one of the things that you mentioned before, it kind of made me want to ask you this question. So you said that you started at $25 a show. And then nowadays you hear a lot of talk about artists or just in general, people in the entrepreneurship space wanting things fast and easy. For you, why do you think, or do you agree with, maybe interning or volunteer work? What are your thoughts on, people putting their time in to establish themselves in a space?
You cannot miss a step. So important. And you don't want to miss a step.
Right.
And if you think about people who are successful, we always engage them at their peak or on their rise. We don't look at where they started from.
Right.
New artists, when you hear about a new artist, they've been around for 3 or 4 years. You just didn't know because it takes that long for them to develop their identity, develop their style, develop their craft, develop their music, get in the space, right? Have a lot of rejection, have some great moments. And then it catches on because they've been diligent and persistent and consistent on what they've been doing. So when people think that looking at Instagram and judging their life and their race based on someone else's, then that's just a recipe for failure. Because ideally you have to have your promise and your goals and your destiny for what's best for you and put the work in that's going to ultimately be the deciding factor on how you move forward.
It's so true. And I know someone is listening like, man, he had the dream career. He've experienced a dream career working with all of these amazing artists and the things that you're continuing to do. And just these amazing labels and things like that. And they're like, why would you want to leave that to bet on yourself? Talk about the process of, knowing it's time to transition, but then also knowing that it's time to bet on yourself and some of the maybe fears or things that you have to overcome to do that.
So the concept of betting on yourself may not necessarily lend for everyone the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Betting on yourself may not be to become an entrepreneur. It may be to get the promotion at that job. It may be to switch careers. It may be, I need to go back to school. It may be, I need to do something on the side. So betting on yourself is what's going to be your purpose for what's important for you on this journey that you have in life. For me, it was really important as I started to grow. You get it in your belly. And ideally for me, having the success and being a part of successful teams, I always wanted that level of success on my own. During my time in corporate, I also started my own business, a real estate business, which I at one point had, over 100+ doors. So it was always the entrepreneurial aspect for me and preparing for rainy days, which was really important. It's just like in the Bibles, 7 years of famine, 7 years of harvest, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to be prepared for the famine and make sure that you work the harvest, right?
Right.
And while you have things in the silo, know what you can and what you can't do. So it's been a great journey for me on knowing that having the opportunity and the liberty to go out every day, be happy every day, and enjoy life on a different level. Like just working for, as you asked me earlier, what's it like for people, leaving the corporate and working with these artists? Well, guess what? Artists are artists, companies are companies, and at some point there's an expiration date on all of that. Why not be in control of what's important for you? It wasn't so much for me about getting past the velvet rope as much as it was on acquiring the knowledge and the information and the know-how on how to feed myself.
I love that. And, when you say that, it makes me think of, it seems that, of course, you had a goal for yourself. So you had a plan. Would that be correct to say? And would that be correct to say?
Yes, Monique. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
And I ask that because I think it's important to note that because some people, especially those who are listening, may be dealing with the struggle of leaving behind their comfort zone. And what advice would you give to someone in that space right now? And if it would be, setting a goal if they haven't.
Man, comfort can work for and against you.
Okay.
It can, and for you, it it gives you the security. It gives you takes the guesswork out. It makes life simple. And if that's what it is for you, then so be it, right? It's your choice. If it works, it can work against you is because guess what? There's so much gas in your tank. You have so much distance to go, but you only choose to, drive in the neighborhood. So you don't get to where you ultimately could be because you don't want to take a chance and go beyond what you already know. So it just becomes really important on knowing your journey and your purpose and what it is that you want from your life. And once you identify your life, then things start to reveal themselves totally different to you and you know what's next.
Sound advice. And I'm sure that you was there any fear?
Fear is probably not the right word.
Okay, what was it?
for me is probably just, it's the risk, and I'm a risk
Mm.
taker. So knowing betting on myself, which is true to my character and who I am. So it was more about, okay, we're gonna double down on this
Right.
and let's play, deal.
Yeah. And you mentioned, so my next question would be, being that business ownership or entrepreneurship is risky business, do you feel that there are any key personality traits or skills that one needs to develop to succeed as a business owner?
Of course, you just don't jump in things as a novice and don't prepare a team, don't have a plan, don't have a strategy. You want to minimize the risk. Obviously, there's nothing that's guaranteed, but you can minimize your exposure. Whether you're dealing in the equity space, whether you're dealing in the real estate space, whether you're an artist that's just getting started in the business, or whatever ventures you may be thinking about as an entrepreneur, ultimately it comes down to being savvy, being studied, and realizing, like, you know what, this is your opportunity. So the time that you're spending doing whatever it is that you feel is best for you, you need to make sure that you are putting every bit of effort into it. Almost think of it as like going through K through 12. You don't have a choice. You have to, especially up until 16, or your parents or whoever your care provider will go to jail in most states if they don't make sure that you go to school. Think of it
Right.
as like, because that discipline is what's needed for the rest of your life. So think of stepping out or being an entrepreneur or whatever facet or avenues you're thinking about, that you need to prepare yourself. And that's what's going to ultimately help you minimize that risk.
I love it. And one of the things you mentioned earlier is just the jump start. What jump started you is, like you said, the promoter interning. And I know one of the things that you talk about also is mentorship. So I want to dive into that as well. What role has it played in your journey? And any advice for those who are looking for mentors?
I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't have great mentors.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at successful people, or you look at people who you perceive to be successful, or you look at, corporate CEOs or president of the United States, or or an artist, anyone who you may look to and go, wow, you know what? They're a great representation of themselves or whatever they're doing. And the reason being is because they had people who committed to them. It's important for you to, as an individual, to figure out and seek out, if no one seeks you out, those people that you feel that can be important in helping you make sure that you take that every step you hit. So as you start to ascend fast, that you're still able to hit the steps, although you're moving faster. So I make it my duty, and since I was started in the business, to give everything that I have to everyone I know, because ultimately that's the only way that we're going to move forward and help the next generation, is to support the ideas of those by all the mistakes that either, I've made, and be able to deflect them from making.
So true. And any tips on, finding mentors, or for those who are listening? Because some people feel like, I know there's this thing that people feel that the mentors, they have to have access to them, but sometimes it could be someone that may not even know that you exist. But any advice on, getting mentors or finding mentors?
Well, it's old fashioned, how I think about it. Sometimes people are looking for, this grandiose method of how to get, people involved in my life, when there are people who are willing to be involved in your life. You just don't see them. Whether it's, that aunt, that uncle, it might start with that in the family that's an outlier than everyone else. Might be a friend's father or mother who, guess what, has taken a liking to you. It might be that teacher or that coach that, what's always pushing you. So you have to look in your circle and then go, you know what, who are the people who really reach out, who really care, who really pour into me, and go like, you know what, I need to make sure I stay connected with them.
Yes. And speaking of circle, and one of the things that you mentioned about yourself is the discipline. And, I think it's important to mention when you're betting on yourself and doing those things to have those, be careful or be mindful of the people that you surround yourself with. How intentional were you with your circle, and how did you make sure that you had a good circle around you? And any tips for those who are listening?
Well, for me, we were rooted in the church, so I'm a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with very intense biblical teachings. So for me, my mom told me when I was young, 5, that I had the ability to discern. So what is discernment? If you really think about it, it's just like that internal radar, if you think about it, right? To help lead you in the right direction or expose you to what you need to see. So for me, what I've been able to do is just really hone in on that frequency and understand, like, when people show themselves, as Maya Angelou said, right, then you need to believe them. And you don't want to put hope in situations that are hopeless. And ideally, people will put you in those positions, and you have to know when to stop. You have to know when it's important that relationships have burned themselves out. You have to know, like, people are only with you to at some point that they're using you, or you're always giving and they're only taking. And that's in what happens frequently is that, no one wants to lose a friend. No one wants to be by themselves. But you know what? Sometimes you don't need a friend, and it's important to understand the appreciation of being by yourself. So that all helps you as you move forward.
And Vinny, in what ways have you seen, your process and, as the topic of today is betting on yourself, transform your life?
Man, it's been great. It's been a great journey. I look at my life from where I started to, the next chapter in my life, figuratively and literally speaking. I have a book, and I wouldn't have never imagined being an author. But when the opportunity presented itself, I didn't run from it. And it's a taxing, giving, vulnerable circumstance. So I'm just looking what's next and best for me as I move through the literary space, as I continue to grow my company, as I start to add new people into my toolbox of connections and exposure. So I'm super excited.
I am excited as well. And speaking of your book, let's talk about your book, On Impact, Life, Leadership, and Betting on Yourself. What inspired you to write this book?
So August 31st, 2014, I was in a near-death car accident where I hit a tree at 90 miles an hour. And at that moment, on impact of the tree, literally and figuratively, is when the book was put inside of me. I sustained at that point level 2 concussion, L3, L4 vertebrae fracture, bulging disc in my back, lacerated liver, lost half the blood in my body, and severed 2 feet of my small intestine when we hit the tree that hard. And at that very moment, that's when God had put On Impact in me. And On Impact is Impact is an acronym that stands for intuition, mastery, pivot, authenticity, connection, and teamwork. And it takes the reader from my life as 11 years old to modern day with an undercurrent of music. And it gives the reader an opportunity at the end of each chapter with takeaways of anecdotes that you can apply to yourself and pretty much say, if Benny could do it, I could do it too.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And now, is the book available now? Is it coming out this September?
It's on Amazon. Go get it right now. Don't buy one. I'm checking everybody. we 7. We 7. Everybody got to buy 7 books.
Okay. I love it. I love it. And now, what was the process like for you writing this book?
it was very humbling.
Mm.
It's taken me several years and 24 edits.
Wow.
I think people, it's almost like the music game now. Everybody's an artist, although there's a million uploads of music every week, right? So now, because you can take your music to the store yourself as an individual, people negate the process that really goes in to being an artist because everyone thinks it's so easy.
Yeah.
And I think we loosely say that about, I'm sure too, Miss Monique, everybody is like, oh, I'm going to do a book. No, you're not. It's hard. But what I learned about myself through the process was so much about me that I didn't know or hadn't tapped back into in the storytelling aspect of who I've become from being a young boy to a grown man, and that I'm willing to share that to help anybody who my stories can move you in a different direction, in a positive direction, or realize, like, guess what? He went through it and he survived. I can go through it too, and I'll survive.
I love that. And I love that message. And I just get so like hyped when I see us writing books and, because these are things that are going to live on for years. And I think about my own journey when I started entrepreneurship. That is what inspired me, seeing someone else's story. So it's just so amazing to, see and just be inspired by us continuing to write. And I also want to ask you now, for someone who is just starting their business, maybe in the first year, what advice would you give them?
Get a great team. And ideally doesn't mean you have to go hire employees, but whatever the functionality of your business is, that you should make sure that the basics are covered. Get you an accountant or a bookkeeper. Have your paperwork reviewed by an attorney. Make sure that you do the homework. Those are the basic things that are important in starting a business, creating your LLC. All of those things are key, and putting together a constructive business plan, whether you send out for it and pay for it, or you template yourself. But it's important to have a roadmap to know how you're going to create and move forward in this business.
Yes, and I second that. Having a plan, I always tell people on the podcast, like, oh my God, we really push having a solid foundation. So yes, I agree. And Benny, what has been the best risk that you've taken for yourself and just that has paid off?
The best risk that I've taken for myself. I mean, I don't think I could actually streamline the chances that I've taken to one or another. So there's a series of them. First and foremost, realizing the importance and the value of family with my first child, moving into the music business as opposed to pursuing comedy was something that I loved. But during she was a child, 2 years old, I didn't have health insurance. And when that internship came up for $25 a week, but I realized that, it could lead to something bigger. I had to step back on my dream. And for me, that risk of going into something that I knew nothing about was important because it changed my life. Yeah. That moment changed my life for what this life is. Had I not, then we might not be here. And along the way, there had been several different opportunities. Like each company that I've worked at, I've left at the top of my game to continue to move forward. And had I not, then we probably wouldn't be here. Because ultimately, I think you started the podcast by stating or indicating that, I've worked for all these great companies. But if I didn't work for all of these great companies, then there would be great people who would never have been discovered.
Right.
Right. There'd have been great artists that wouldn't have never happened. There would have been, Benny, who knows who I would be. I might just be Benjamin by now, right? I might have switched over on y'all, right? We're talking a whole nother story. So for me, I look at look at all of that, and most importantly, betting on myself, stepping out of my comfort zone to be set up for what's next for me when it's given to me by the Creator, which is most important. I'm prepared to receive it.
So amazing, so beautiful. And, I think about in entrepreneurship, one of the things a lot of people face is getting to that level of going, and eventually reaching burnout. So for you, how are some ways that you practice self-care and just make sure that you're taking care of yourself?
So I'm a hiker. Yeah, you'll see me. I'll be the only one of us running around on the trails. Right? Everybody cool though. They know it's me. But I do that. I read the Bible. I'm a walker. I'm a runner as well. And I also do flotation. So I find my means of, and I'm very big on my diet, on the things that I eat, because that's what's most important is what you put in. Right. Is exactly what you're going to get out in every aspect of it. So, I find a way, and I find quiet time just to sit. I like to drive long distances by myself. So things like that.
I love it. And what are some of the tools and resources that have helped you in your entrepreneurial journey that you can recommend to our audience?
Great mentors would be the first. Obviously, education, staying on top of the information predicated to the businesses that I'm in would be second. And most importantly, I can't say enough, creating a good team and having a strong circle and people that, you can be vulnerable with to help you as you move forward in your journey. That's what's been, paramount in my life and will continue to be as I move forward.
Thank you for sharing. And Benny, what does it mean to you to be Black in business?
Wow, to be Black in business. That is so, we can go a lot of different directions with that question, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to probably touch on as many as I can, because that's complex, and that's a whole hour conversation to unpack. Mm-hmm. Being Black in business is it depends on where you sit, right? Because different Black people get different opportunities. So with the opportunity, what are you going to do with it? If you're the only one who wants to be in the room, then there are no other opportunities for Blacks. If you're a Black person in business who feels, the only way that I can succeed is if every one of us succeed, then you're going to open up a lot of doors for us to move through. So it's just important on, as a Black person, as a minority, as a Black man, to make sure that everything I do, everything I know, everything I learn, and every door I go through, that I'm bringing somebody with me.
See, I felt that. I really felt that. That was so powerful. I love asking that question because it's always so inspiring and powerful, our responses. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, no problem.
And people who are listening, this has been amazing. They are wondering, how can they connect with you? How can they find you? And how can they support you? So please share.
So they can find me on all my social handles are at Benny Pough, BENNYPOUGH, as well as my website is bennypough.com as well. And the best way to support me is go buy those 7 books. Remember, 7 is a spiritual number. Yes. And make sure that not only you have one for you, but you have one for people who are important to you.
Yes. And I will be sure to put that information in the show notes for everyone who is listening. And Benny, thank you so much for stopping through and just sharing your wealth of knowledge. And, we wish you the best of luck on everything, but thank you for being here.
Thank you, Monique.
So amazing and such a powerful story. I really appreciate Benny sharing his story and his journey and just being so transparent with us, and him sharing his experience and the highlights of his career, being at the top of his game within the music industry and still saying, nah, like this isn't for me, and then deciding to transition into creating his own company. I feel that is so amazing, and it takes a lot of guts, and it also takes a special kind of person to do that. So I want to remind you that if you're in the process of leaving your comfort zone, whatever that may be, know that you're being brave and doing what most want. And what was also so fascinating about Benny's journey, and I was thinking this as we spoke, is that within his message was the importance of shifting your thinking. I asked him a couple of times about fear, and he really didn't speak about fears, but instead he looked at it as, I have a plan and I have a goal, and I'm going to do what's necessary to reach it. I mean, come on. He also mentioned that he had over 60 jobs. But if that isn't being relentless, I don't know what is. So what I also took away from today, and what I want you to take away also, is that understand, in order to want something different for your life, you have to do different. And this might mean, as Benny said, decide if you're going to allow your comfort zone to work for or against you. And the decision is yours. All right, that's a wrap. But be sure to check out the full show notes by going to blacktobusiness.com/83. And also be sure to get your 7 copies of Benny's book on impact, life, leadership, and betting on yourself. See you next week, family.